Good morning, afternoon or evening, wherever you are. I'm Paul Clark and welcome to my studio. So what have I got for you lovely lot today? Well, it's part 2 in the trilogy of our painting retreat down in the New Forest. And we're going to have a go at painting this lovely little riverside scene of the master shipbuilder's house in this beautiful little hamlet. So come and join me and we'll paint this step by step together. But before we start, I've got a very short video, only a minute long, of our plein air painting day. So I hope you'll enjoy that. So our next plein air painting day took us to the little riverside village of Buckler's Hard. Now, this was the location in 2023 for the Sky Arts programme Landscape Artist of the Year, so if it's good enough for them, it's good enough for us. The little hamlet of Georgian cottages sits on the banks of the Beaulieu River and is famously known for its historic shipbuilding, including 3 ships used by Nelson at the Battle of Trafalgar. Although it was a little windy on the day, we had lots of lovely things to paint. Lovely colours, Reinhardt. And you two can stop posing for the camera. The little street included a hotel, restaurant, pub and even a chapel, all quite useful when you're here for the day. Anyone seen Steve? And not forgetting to visit the little museum. All in all, we had a wonderful day's painting with a great bunch of people. Today's materials: my paper is some Arches cold press finish, 300 pound, 100% cotton, nice and thick so it won't need stretching, but of course any decent watercolour paper will do. My colours today: cobalt blue, phthalo blue, alizarin crimson, cadmium yellow, yellow ochre, burnt sienna, burnt umber, Payne's grey and just a touch of dark purple. And 3 brushes from my range, a 3/4 inch flat, number 12 and number 6 round. So here's the reference photo of the master shipbuilder's house, and you could simply take a screenshot if you want a copy of the original. So looking at the picture, there's definitely a few things we can change. We certainly don't want that horrible old scaffolding all over there, so we'll take that out, and those railings and probably those picnic tables, just too complicated. Let's simplify the scene a bit. So here's the pencil drawing, and as always a free drawing template is available to download from my website, link in the description below. But if you're drawing this yourself, then a good starting point is to locate where that vanishing point is, and it's always worth remembering that it'll converge on your eye line or line of sight. The other thing that I often do is practice some skies first, and inevitably the ones you practice are better than ones you finally paint, as you tend to be more relaxed. Off we go, and I'm just part wetting with a few blobs with clean water, not saturating the whole paper. Now, on the day we were there, it was quite a breezy day, so I'm trying to get a lot of movement in the clouds, starting by putting in some cobalt blue, softening some of the edges with clean water. And here dropping in some cloud shadow with some Payne's grey. Here I'm just mixing into my Payne's grey a little touch of alizarin crimson to slightly warm it up. Just letting it mix on the paper. Again here dropping in some blobs of clean water to soften some edges. I think skies can always look great when you've got some hard, some soft edges. And you can see here I'm holding my brush right at the end of the handle. It just gives me more freedom and movement with my brush strokes. Now, I wasn't planning to use any masking fluid, but I just think that masking out these little boats will make painting the river so much easier. Okay, I admit it, I forgot to press the record button for those distant hills, but I simply painted the distant hill in a very blue bias watery flat wash, and while still wet, painted in the nearer bank with a greener wash using my normal mix of cadmium yellow and cobalt blue. Now I was quite happy for the two hills to merge into each other, and then I dropped in a darker value along the bottom edge, and for the river it was just simply a flat wash of cobalt blue. Now I'm sure I don't need to audibly tell you every colour I'm using, so I will list them all down below. And here, this is just one of the slipways down into the river. And this is just to suggest a slight reflection in the water of each boat. Keep it nice and light. Yeah, that's a little dark, so I'm going to lift out some of the colour with a damp brush. Now, before I paint the big tree, I'm going to preserve some of those little gaps of light with some masking fluid. Next, keeping my brush nice and flat to the paper, picking up some of its texture, I'm using the dry brush technique to paint in this tree, and I'm using quite a yellowy mix of my cobalt blue and cadmium yellow. And here with a more conventional brush stroke to fill in the rest of the tree. And while that's still wet, dropping in a much darker bluer mix to create these shadows. And I've even added in a touch of alizarin crimson here just to add a bit of interest. And this dark value here will help to give the shape of the hedge and the umbrella below. And I'm just tapping here with my brush to get some nice fine leaf texture. And just dropping in here a few blobs of clean water, hopefully to create some nice back runs or cauliflowers. Now for the wisteria, and I'm using my number 6 brush and just painting in some blobby shapes with some dark steam purple, but of course you could use any bright purple for this. And here again, just dropping in a few blobs of clean water to create some interesting texture. Now the tree has dried, I'm painting in this hedge, and I've added in a little touch of phthalo blue into my normal green mix just to give a little bit of extra brightness and contrast with the tree above. You could of course use some cerulean blue. Now while that's still wet, I'm coming in with a really nice dark green, making sure I leave that top edge nice and light. And a little bit of shadow in this distant bank. And I'm painting in much the same way the foliage here on the wisteria, starting with a much yellowy green first, still using my number 12 brush, and then dropping in a darker green into the shadows. And now I've switched to my number 6 brush to get in a little closer and give the shape of the wisteria. Now we have some wisteria in our own garden, but it's much lighter, not the nice purpley shade of this variety. Next for the gravel path here, and I'm using some watery yellow ochre and taking it right up into the section here where the grass is. And I'm using my flat brush here just to get the colour down quickly. And here, to create a bit of shadow, I'm dropping into the wet some burnt umber. And when that's dry, I'm going back to painting the grass using my normal green mix. And here, using the dry brush technique with a quick whooshy brush stroke, I'm trying to create the illusion of the grass growing into the gravel path. And here, dropping in wet some darker green. Next, it's my directional splat technique, just loading the brush up with nice moist paint, pulling back the bristles and just letting it go. Now, I have seen other artists use an old toothbrush, but I think with this technique you can really control the direction of the splats. So I'm using green on the grass and brown on the path, and if it's too heavy you can just lightly dab with a tissue. Now it's time to start on the building, and again I'll list all the colours I'm using below. I've now switched to my number 6 brush to paint around the wisteria. So now we need to let this totally dry, so it's a perfect time for a short break, and as this is a shipbuilding yard, it's got to be a jug of galleon ale. Next I'm going to start painting some shadow details with some burnt umber. can see I'm painting the front face of these dormer windows with a darker value because you can see the light is coming in from the left hand side. So now everything else is totally dry, I'm just getting rid of the masking fluid. Now I'm thinking these gaps of light look a little bit artificial, so I'm just filling them in with a little bit of cloud colour, or green here to match the colour of the grass behind. And then I'm just filling in with a few leaves and branches in front. And I have to say I do like that little back run there, which I got from dropping in the clean water. Now for some details on the boats, and you can really paint these in any colour you like, but I'm sticking very much to blues and greys. Few more little details in those gaps of light. Almost forgot these boats in the distance, but it's really just suggestive detail. Simple little lines and blobs will do. Back to the building, and I'm painting in some shadows in all the white paintwork using some Payne's Grey. Now I was going to say that I would have loved to have painted this plein air with the rest of the group, but on these events my time is mostly taken up with advising the students, despite the accusation of me having a swift one in the pub, which is next to this very building. Or so I'm told. A few more leaf details here on the wisteria, but I am conscious of not overworking this. Next, for these sort of water stains on the roof, it always helps to give a building that oldie-worldy look. Back to my green and a few more details, and although this is a fairly detailed painting, I'm still trying to keep my brush strokes nice and loose. But I think we can go for one more layer of details on the wisteria here. And a little touch of purple on the flowers here. Next for the details on the roof, and I'm using a mix of burnt umber and Payne's Grey and using my number 6 brush. And with these roof tiles here, I'm not painting everyone, leaving plenty of gaps and just little short dabby brush strokes. And of course it's important that you follow along the direction of the roof. And for the door, it just has to be red, so a nice solid block of alizarin crimson. Then to create a little shadow, I've mixed in some cobalt blue into the red, just for a little shadow area. And now for all these dark details, still using my number 6 brush and some Payne's Grey. So in this little gap here where you look through into the garden, I don't really know what's going on, so I'm going to fudge a little bit of detail. Might even suggest that there's a person standing there, but it's all very loose and impressionistic. And this is the umbrella, which I'm just painting in yellow ochre. I mean, they were all closed at the time, but I thought it made an interesting shape having it open. And putting in a watery shadow side with a touch of burnt umber. Right, back to the building, and although they're not like this in the reference photo, sometimes I like to paint in top windows in a blue which suggests reflection off the sky. I think it always adds a nice little feature. Now I'm painting all the windows as solid blocks because I'm going to put in the white crossbars with some opaque medium later. And for all these lower windows I'm just using some Payne's Grey. Now this property was the master builder's house, and it's quite a bit posher than the others in the row. One of them is open to the public and is a sort of a museum, and it had tiny little rooms for the workers' families to live in. Now I'm guessing that the reason that this village made such a perfect spot for shipbuilding is its position on the river near the sea, and being in the heart of the 112 square mile New Forest, there's always going to be plenty of wood. Again, I'm painting all these windows as fairly flat square blocks because I'm going to paint in the white frames later. And while I'm waiting for the windows to dry, I'm just painting in a really watery cobalt blue just to suggest a little bit of movement in the water. And back to the house and Payne's Grey for these details. This is a little stone box sort of thingy that the drain pipe goes into. And I've noticed my wisteria is a little flat against the wall, so I need to push it out into the path a little. It's mixed media time, and I'm taking a creamy coloured pastel pencil and I'm just putting in a few suggestions of this grout. No, that's not right. Mortar, that's it. Not everywhere, just here and there. Your eye will just fill in the rest. But it's very important you follow that same line of perspective to that vanishing point. And next, with a yellowy green, just a few leafy highlight details. Now, I was asked recently if you could just use standard watercolour pencils for these details, and yes you can, but they're not quite as opaque as these pastel pencils, which have a slight chalkiness to them. And they remain fairly fixed to the paper, so I don't use any spray fixative. But of course you can always use some gouache or acrylic. Now it's time for my white Posca ink pen. Now I do have a fine version which I can't find, so I'm going to have to go with this thicker one and just be brave.
Alright, who's taking it?
But it is nice and opaque and it's perfect for these little white highlights. Right, here we go with the tricky bit for the windows, and I'm just going to try and do these with one quick stroke. I'll come back to that one. Just don't sneeze. No, I'm not going to try and write Master Builder's House, just a few squiggles will do. And here, with a very watery burnt umber, I'm just suggesting the odd brick or two. Now, I'm just about to sign it, but I'm thinking that sky area above the tree just looks a little bit light, a little bit white, so I'm just dabbing in some clean water and putting in a tiny little light wash of cobalt blue. That's enough, all done, and this one took a little longer than normal, nearly 4 hours. Well, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did, and you'll give it a go. And you know, I always say it, make it your own and always try and enjoy the experience. And of course, you don't need to put in as much detail as I have. And in the meantime, please don't forget to like, subscribe if you haven't already, it is free, leave a comment. I do read every single one, can't always reply to them all of course, and I'll look forward to seeing you all again next week for another Watercolour Wednesday. Take care everyone, cheers.